Bruce,
Here.
Erdman Hermans,
Here.
Paulson,
Here.
Schaefer,
Here.
Clavish,
Here.
and Brar is present. Ramsey is absent.
All right, so well, we got a almost full house, so. Okay, so it's 7 o'clock and the next item is the public hearing, rezoning from Ag to Plan Development District, PDD, General Implementation Plan, GIP, Bell Farm, 44 acres east of 4887 Parliamentary Street. So Abby, you want to give the staff report and then we give a chance to the developer and then we have the public comments, just like we did last time.
Yep. I included my staff report and comments in the packet. This GIP submittal is very much consistent with the concept that was submitted, the revised concept that was submitted and reviewed favorably by the Plan Commission. The Parks Board has also taken a look at the proposal for dedicating 3 acres of parkland, and they are supportive. I'll mention that we have received one comment that was also included in the packet, and we'll make sure that that gets entered in the public record once the public hearing is open. But other than that, I do not have anything to add.
Okay, Kathleen, do you want to make a short presentation?
Well, we're just really excited. Obviously, we've been working on this for a long time. We want to do something stunning. We want to do something that's stunning for not only for people, but the earth. And we've been working with the city and with Plan Commission and the various committees for a long time now. And we continue to design and redesign, and I think that's all I have to say at this moment. We're just ecstatic to be before everyone today, and hoping if there are questions that we're able to answer them. And we've tried to make ourselves very available to the public, and we held 2 neighborhood meetings and given out email addresses and answered emails. And but other than that, we're excited.
Wonderful. You have been very cooperative. Whenever committees made recommendations, you made changes. Excellent job. So we are going to see anyone who wants to speak, please raise your hand. And you have 3 minutes. Abby, do you see any raised hands? I do not.
Not yet. Let me just.
I would like to speak, but there's no raise hand button.
Okay, Hans, go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Plan Commissioners, for holding the public hearing. Hans Hilbert, 3209 Cedar Trail. Speaking tonight representing the Friends of Pheasant Branch Conservancy. We've included our comments in written form to you prior for inclusion in your packet, as well as a memo that was sent to the City of Middleton Water Resources Management Commission in January of this year. I'm assuming that you have those and have read them, so I'm not going to read those comments, but I do want to just highlight the Friends of Pheasant Branch Conservancy concerns with this particular development, primarily due to its location within the Graber Pond watershed and the impacts that changes to Graber Pond's watershed can have downstream in the Pheasant Branch Conservancy. And those concerns are really well highlighted in that memo to the Water Resource Management Commission. In looking over the Planned Development District, the GIP certainly talks the talk about stormwater management and water quality and environmental concerns, but it also leaves a lot to be addressed at a later point, either through other studies or through the specific implementation plan process. So some of that uncertainty concerns us about how that may in the future have to be dealt with to manage a development of this scope. The plan calls for, of the property, 50% open space, but also contains 55% impervious surfaces. So that's impervious surface located in open space, which is a concern to us because that's a lot of stormwater management to handle for that amount of impervious surface, especially in areas that are already saturated with water, groundwater in those wetland areas where they're not necessarily high quality recharge areas. And we question whether that amount of development on this area will be able to carry out some of the goals that have been established in the Graver Pond management plan from 2006. And like I mentioned before, when the Graver Pond watershed cannot contain itself in terms of water, it puts a negative impact on the Pheasant Branch Conservancy. So it's critical that any development carry out those goals of managing the Graver Pond as a prairie pothole with, as a confined basin. So the Friends really have, 4 things we hope that the Plan Commission will consider as part of this GIP. One being a reiteration of what we said in our January memo of no new release of stormwater from the Graver Pond watershed to Pheasant Branch. And that's based on an established ordinary high water mark elevation of 904 feet above mean sea level. And we feel it's important to continue to manage this area as a confined watershed, a prairie pothole, if you will. And we find that will have the minimum impact on Pheasant Branch and other downstream waterways from flooding, nutrient loading, things of that nature. We'd like the Plan Commission to explicitly require in the GIP low impact development. We talked about a lot of methods that have been used elsewhere, and we feel that specific examples could be incorporated in the GIP, not just left to be addressed later in a specific implementation plan. And I'll just jump lastly, we really hope that the Plan Commission will require public hearings before the SIP recommendations to the council for this. So it gives interested parties like the Friends of the Pheasant Branch an ability to comment on specific design proposals when those details are available in the future. Again, I thank you for holding the hearing. And if you have any questions, I'm here as well as other members of the Friends of Pheasant Branch based on the comments in our memos.
Thank you, Hans. Is there anyone else who may want to speak at this time? Please raise your hand or somehow make yourself known. Anyone else who may want to speak at this time? Abby, do you see anyone else who want to speak? I don't see any raised hands
No.
here.
There's
Well,
no
how
one
do you
else.
raise your hand?
Pardon me?
Do you need to are you trying to raise your hand, Beth? You can speak now if you'd like.
No, I'm good.
Is there a last chance? Is there anyone else who wants to speak at this time? Okay, if there are no takers, I'm going to close the
Well,
public hearing part.
just a second, Mayor. We had a public comment that Abby was going to read into the record, or at least state who it's from.
Well, it was from the Friends of Pheasant Branch, and Hans noted it. It's the one that's on the screen here.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Sorry, Mayor, go ahead. I just wanted to make sure we had that.
Okay, I'm going to close this part of the meeting and we move on to approval of the minutes and need a motion to approve.
This is Paulson. I'll move approval.
Need a second. Okay, I will second it. Any questions, comments, changes? Any question, comments, changes? Okay, so the motion is to approve the Plan Commission minutes of October 26, 2021. All those in favor of the approval say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We are on to the item number, next item, which is the rezoning from agricultural to plan development district general implementation plan of well-formed 44 acres east of 4887 Parmenter Street. So do we begin with the presentation, Kathleen or Abby? How do you want to move forward?
Kathleen, did you and your team plan to make a presentation this evening? If so, I can stop share.
You're on mute, Kathleen.
Sorry about that. We did not do a specific presentation for tonight since the material we presented about 4.5 or 5 weeks ago was almost instantly submitted in this application. So we weren't going to do anything specific for this evening other than to say we're just really excited to get rolling. And again, here to answer any additional questions that have come up. With us tonight, we have Bruce Huller, who is my civil engineer. We have Steinberg, our architects from Steinberg Hart, and they are our multifamily architects. And then Melissa Huggins, who is my development consultant, is also here tonight. So we are happy to take any questions.
Yeah, so, okay, questions from the Plan Commission now. I'm going to start. I have one question for you. So the speaker pointed out that, well, number one, I'm very excited that 50% of the acreage will be green space. That's absolutely exciting. But I just wanted to see, how do you reconcile that the speaker, Hans, said that 55% is impervious. So somehow there's a difference of 5% one way or the other. If you could just clarify that one, that would be great.
Yeah, we were actually lowballing the 50%. What the data that we quoted in the documents said 55% pervious, so 45% impervious. So when we were saying 50% open space, we were actually lowballing it. It's actually more than that. And we have not yet accounted for the possibility of the green roofs and different things that we will be doing related to the roofs of the multifamily and commercial as well.
Wow. So it's even more than 50% green. So that is very impressive. So that was just a somehow typo or something there. So.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly where that came from because as I'm looking at the stormwater management page in the application, we have a data point there that Bruce Haller was the one who, you know, as our civil engineer, put that number together. The estimated pervious area is 55%, so impervious 45%. And again, similar to, I mean, I very much appreciate the Friends of Pheasant Ranch's comments. And as a user of like the trail system and everything, I'm so grateful for what they do. Some of the comments that were made about the low impact development, a lot of the things that we outlined in our stormwater management plan in terms of the techniques we're going to be using come directly from low impact development strategies. So we are excited about this aspect of what we're doing because, again, approaching this from a sustainability standpoint, stormwater management is critical. Water management in general is critical. We understand that, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure we're doing everything at the highest level, including multiple best management practices.
And I want to say thank you to the Friends of Pheasant Branch, all of them, including Herb Gorm there, the expert in this area, and Warren Giebert. He had written a little report about the Graber Pond, and I want to say thank you to Warren Giebert, the chair of the Water Sources Management Commission. So that's a great job. And the Friends of Pheasant Branch, they're always welcome, and they have made a great comments. If there's any special comments, you have read it. If you or your team would want to address this time before I ask the other commission members to ask questions.
Bruce, is there anything else you wanted to say regarding the impervious versus pervious in the open space?
No, well, just to confirm that, yeah, the 45%, 55 was in fact 45% impervious, 55% pervious. And just going back to listening to what Hans had mentioned about earlier about, just making sure that we're following up with what we're claiming we're going to do. I'm in the middle of compiling a sort of a summary for Water Resources Committee at the next meeting of focusing more on the infiltration component of our development. And what we're moving away from on a typical development is we're moving our infiltration practices upland to the source, rather than trying to get it all down in the lower areas that typically have the higher groundwater and the water table. We're taking them within the site and using the favorable soils to help with that infiltration on more of a home by home basis, and in the multifamily as well. But so that's a little bit of different approach than a typical development. And I think that's going to help us try to meet that 100% infiltration goal that's been set.
Excellent. Okay, so the plan commissioners, I see the Kurt Paulson first and then Randy Bruce. Kurt, please go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up with Hans, or I see Herb is also on the call. First of all, just a informational question. In your memo to the Water Resources Management, you talked about the flood elevation control structure at Graber Pond, and that's the one that was proposed a few years ago that would be basically a pump when it reaches a certain height. Is that what you're talking about, Hans?
Well, I can answer that, Kurt. There is no pump. It will be, there was a first proposal by the Water Resources Management Commission to have a pump, but this is going to be all gravity flow. And so whether it's 904 or 902, I guess at the last Water Resources Management Commission, there was still, I don't know if Eric is on the call, he probably would, is there anyone from the Public Works Committee on the call or from the Public Works Department?
Well,
So there is no pump there. So it's going to be simply a gravity flow.
But what I hear from Hans is that they want, well, maybe Hans should answer himself. You want it at 904.
Yeah, that's what
And
it's
you'd
set
prefer,
at right now.
and you'd actually prefer no overflow. Is that correct, Hans?
Well, I don't know if it's, I guess this is the discussion with the, okay, Hans.
Well, so
Hans, if you have any answer, please go ahead. And Herb gone, maybe you will be the more familiar with this one. Herb, do you want to answer it?
I can answer. I believe I know the question that Kurt is asking. And in the 2006 Graber Pond master plan that the city approved, they established that the water level, for a prairie potwall, you're going to have years where the water goes down and, it's going to fill up to a natural point of spillover. And when that happens, it flows into Pheasant Branch watershed through conveyance of Misty Valley and some wetlands and into the across Pheasant Branch Road. And that had been established to be at 904. And, we see that as the natural break in the watershed. And by maintaining that, that's the most natural way to move forward with having the least impact on downstream flooding and nutrient loading.
well, and so so Hans, I know since you were on council and on the plan commission for many years, is there a way we can actually put that as one of our conditions of approval of the GIP, or is that just something to make sure that is noted and that Public Works and Water Resources Management Committee really look at when the stormwater management plan is presented? Because it's related to your other request, which is that we put on the GIP something about low impact development. And I was wondering if you wanted more specifics on that or just a general comment about low impact development, because one of the ways to do low impact development, of course, is not to have curb and gutter on streets, just to have that flow into yards. But that doesn't seem to be consistent with what they're proposing. Right, which is a more urban feel, where you would have curb and gutter. I guess if I could get Hans to respond and then perhaps the development team.
Yeah, I think it's something for the plan commission to consider and for the developer to propose. But in reading I guess it would be the memo that preceded the GIP. I think that's where it alludes to a basin study that's currently underway. And that's what the mayor was referring to with Water Resource Management Commission, looking at, an outfall structure and, revamping Misty Valley's stormwater management area. There's a lot of uncertainty in that kind of language when you refer to a study that's not complete, but say that you're going to follow those recommendations. So it's a little bit bigger than just this GIP being proposed. It's the Water Resource Management Commission, the Plan Commission, and ultimately the council, determining how Graber Pond is going to be managed and whether or not they're going to stray from what was established as a management policy in 2006.
Yeah, thank you, Hans.
So wait, Mayor,
But
I'm trying to
Kurt,
think about what language we could impose on the GIP that's within our scope of review that would help to move those issues forward, but we have no authority to bind Public Works and the council to a particular elevation of Graber Pond, right? I feel like there's two issues being conflated here. One is the low impact development in the stormwater, which we almost always cover at the SIP stage. And the second is what is going to be the final elevation of Graber Pond, which of course is directly related to this issue, but is not something that is within our control as the Plan Commission.
well,
I hope that's making
okay.
sense.
Yeah, I will go ahead and answer that. There's the Water Sources Management Commission, which is already handling it. So I think, our scope here is for this development, and they're going to handle, as they say, 100% of the water on the site. So the other issues really become more or less irrelevant. But the Water Sources Management Commission is going to approve the stormwater plan. And that is, I think, that's what matters in the end.
Well,
so
just as a technical question then, where in the GIP does it say the developer agrees to 100% stay on volume between pre-development and post-development? I might have missed that.
That's what they just mentioned just a little while ago when Bruce Haller talked about it.
But is it in the GIP? Because I hear that Hans and friends, the friends, not Hans, the Friends of Pheasant Branch want that in the GIP.
Okay,
and
so
and Bruce or Kathleen, would you agree to that
Well,
as a condition?
The city stormwater ordinance, because Graber Pond is a natural kettle, the ordinance requires 100% infiltration of the average annual runoff.
Okay.
So that's already been established as part of the code, which we have to abide by, and that's what we're complying with.
But the issue is
your question, Kurt?
no. So the issue is, if there is a concern at the GIP stage for stormwater, as a condition of rezoning, because it's a conditional process, we could impose additional stormwater requirements if that's what the Friends think is necessary. But it doesn't sound as if that is necessary, because the the Water Resources Management Commission will already make sure that there's 100% stay on or infiltration.
Thank you. Well, I think I'm going to rely that on Water Sources Management Commission. So you have more comments or questions, Kurt?
Well, I'm just trying to figure out how we phrase the conditions attached to the GIP. I'll
Well,
yield the floor for a minute while we think about how to write it so that it accomplishes what the Friends are trying to accomplish here. So
well,
I'll let Randy
approval by
talk
the-
now.
Approval of the stormwater plan by the Water Sources Management Commission. That's what we will put in there. Is there any other questions, Kurt? Okay. Commissioner Randy Bruce.
I'm going to start just by following up a little bit with the prior discussion. I'm a little bit with both you, Mayor, and with Kurt. I was initially thinking that all we need to do is have Water Resources review this and approve it. But it sounds like it's still not clear to me that that would be satisfactory to the Friends. And it looks like the Friends have, in fact, done quite a bit of thought on this. And I want to make sure that we are addressing their comments. So if I could just open it back up to them one more time to ask Hans or whoever from the Friends, if just a referral to and approval by Water Resources will be sufficient for from their viewpoint.
So how about if I could ask Herb is an expert. So Herb, what do you think? Herb, go on.
Oh, this is Herb. I think it's important to try to address this in the beginning so that the stormwater BMPs are planned for, at the beginning of the planning of the development, and not as a later in the stage at the specific implementation stage when it's more difficult to make changes. So, I'm encouraged with the plans right now for addressing the low impact development practices. But what we wanted to ensure is that they get into the process early in the planning stages so that it's not a secondary thought. And that's I think our main concern.
And Herb, if I could, are you okay then if we were just to recommend that Water Resources review and approve the stormwater management plan? And I assume that that's going to have to be at this point in time, not at a later date. Would that be acceptable to you?
Personally, yes.
And Bruce, are you able to get enough details now to get Water Resources to approve a stormwater management plan, or does it have to be later?
Well, generally, and I guess until we iron out some of the nuances of the development, if there are issues related to street alignment and maybe street widths, it'd be nice to kind of iron down those details a little bit more. But as we're going through the preliminary and final planning stage, I think that would be the appropriate time to do that. Like I'd mentioned, I'm currently working on just a preliminary analysis on the infiltration for the Water Resources next week, which is going to be my springboard to the remainder of the work that we need to do out there.
Okay.
I would also just add, without having that final decision, which, you know, obviously has been outstanding forever on Bellefontaine and the future of Bellefontaine, that creates a massive amount of impervious surface if that's ultimately going to be. So there's so many unknowns related to that, to have a stormwater management plan to create something when we don't have that known, I think it like fully fleshed out, I think would be challenging. That said, Bruce, are there things that you're comfortable committing to, Bruce, based on what you're hearing here, that could help, you know, everybody feel at peace about this, or feel more, you know, more at peace about this?
So if it would be okay, this is Melissa. Can I jump in here?
Yeah,
for a
go
sec?
ahead, Melissa. Yeah, thank you.
So I just want to point out that Kathleen did reach out a couple of times to the Friends very early on so that we could have these discussions. And I think that shows, and they said they did not want to engage with the development team until the SIP level. So I think that makes sense, because that's where the rubber hits the road. And so I worry that if we go down this road at the GIP level, you know, the development team is not going to have enough information to satisfy, you know, the Friends of the Pheasant Branch and the Water Resources Commission. So I just want us to be careful that we're not asking more of this development than you might ask of another development. Given, you know, the willingness of this particular developer to work with the Friends.
Thank you, Melissa. Randy, you have more questions?
I do. Some specific things out of the GIP that I wanted to ask the development team about. And I'll ask the questions, and then maybe whoever in the development team can answer, but I'll ask them all at one time. Are the shaded areas on the site plan, are those building envelopes? Is that kind of what that represents? That's the maximum extent of the buildings? The second question is, could ADUs be allowed for the single family detached homes? I see ADUs are allowed for a single family attached, but not for the detached. And I was just wondering why that was. You give setbacks, minimum and maximum setbacks. Front yard setbacks, maybe 15 to 20 feet or 10 to 20 feet, whatever they may be. Are those actually minimums and maximums, or are those just a general range of a minimum? It wasn't clear to me. Will we see any written landscape and architectural design standards? I noticed that architectural controls will be required as part of the association. When does the Plan Commission see that information? And I guess at this point in time, I'll just leave it at that for now.
Okay, Kathleen and your team, so go ahead and please take one by one.
So the first question, Randy, was about the shaded areas. I think who's ever controlling the screen, I'm gonna probably turn this over to either Bruce or Jason, but who's ever controlling the screen, you're not talking about, Randy, you're talking about the colored.
The gray shaded areas that we see right now.
The gray shaded, okay. Yeah. So I'm gonna let either Jason or Bruce jump in to answer that question.
I can do that.
I'm happy to. Sure. Well, go ahead, Bruce.
I'll do what I know anyway.
Sure.
So the ones that the shaded areas that are, I'm going to say, within that that sort of half circle, quarter circle green area. Yeah, right there, those. And then off to the right, there are some estate-sized lots there, and those lots, those shaded areas represent the building envelope. So it's everything within, well, let's see, this takes into account the setbacks. And that's the same for the estate lots on the north end on the north side of Bellefontaine. Yeah, from there as well. All the other ones are the actual buildings or houses, the typical house or structure.
Okay.
I can add a little bit on that. This is Jason Claypool from Steinberg Hart. My focus is on the multifamily housing, but Bruce and I are quite familiar with the entire site plan. So Randy, you had asked about the footprints or the gray areas. They are the general nature of what we are thinking about for building location, scale, proximity to each other, to the street, based on the land use or the intensity that we have planned. So if you were looking at Parmenter from the left-hand side, we have larger building footprints. These tend to be multifamily housing building footprints. They tend to front the streets, create courtyards, front on them. So it's a general nature of what we have in mind for what you're going to see when we go into concept design and the SIP. So it's general nature how we set up the urban design. As you move to the Serenbe Street, which is that narrow north-south public street, you start to see some of the detached homes, smaller lots. You tend to get a general nature of how many units you're going to see on that street. I think Bruce had also touched on it. If you continue to go west, you might see some garages in the back that will be accessed from a private street. And so what we're showing is general nature of building footprints and the lot sizes that you can expect too from the different housing types that are being proposed. Does that help answer the question for you?
It does help
Great.
answer the question. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm happy to then address the setbacks for you as well.
You know what, Jason, let me first answer the ADU question, then we'll, because I'm trying to keep these in order for my own purposes. But it's an interesting question, Randy, because we were a little bit at a loss as to how to approach the ADUs, knowing that we want to and are excited, thrilled about ADUs, knowing it's a direction that, according to the master plan, that the city of Middleton wants to go in, but also knowing that there's not a lot of specificity as to how that will play out or work in a process-oriented way within the city. So why we ended up keeping it to the, I think I'm getting a little strobe light effect here, why we ended up keeping it to the attached housing was just so we could confine the number in case it felt like too much for the city, quite frankly. I would be thrilled if every single family detached house also had an ADU, but we were trying to show that we're excited about this. We want to offer it, but also, for people who maybe if there were aspects of the city that wasn't quite ready to have a potential ADU on every offering, we just tried to curb it a bit for that, quite frankly, for that purpose. And also having it on the attached housing allows us within some of those streets and those private streets to create a really awesome, quaint, charming feel using the ADUs over the garages. But again, if we were able to, I would love to have them on everything, because I think they solve a lot of issues that are going on in the world in terms of housing but I also am trying to show some restraint.
I guess the reason for my question on it was, I wasn't sure that we wanted to not permit it. The way it reads now, it seems like it wouldn't be permitted on the single family detached, and at least from my perspective, I'd like to hear from other plan commission members, but from my perspective, I'd want to at least give the option and not have to amend the SIP if that was the case, somebody wanted to do that. The question on the setbacks, is there someone that could answer that one?
I'm happy to answer that one as well. So what you're seeing on the table there to the bottom right, Randy, are the setbacks that you referred to. A lot of thought was put on by the design team on appropriate setbacks for the different housing types, the mixed use buildings, the single family attached, the single family detached. You can see them broken out. It's really important for the placemaking and the transect. Here, these are all minimums. Typically, I think when I look at a zoning code, a setback is always a minimum. If we decided there was a maximum, we would put it in there, but I don't think we believe to be that the case for the submittal here. So you can assume these are all minimums.
Okay. So if it says 15 to 20 foot for a front yard setback, the minimum would really be 15 feet if I get that correctly.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, thank you for bringing that to my attention. So the 15 to 20 feet, that would be a min and max. So they're kind of,
okay.
they're wrote in together.
Okay, that was my question. Okay.
I should have addressed that, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then the last question I think I asked was just about when we might see landscape and architectural design standards. Is that something that we can see at this stage? Or when was the team planning on developing those?
And Randy, I'm assuming you're talking about above and beyond what's on page in the application. There is a page on landscape guidelines. You're talking about above and beyond that?
Correct. Yes. It's I mean, I'm just, this development I think has so much going for it. I think it's very exciting. It's and you've got a great team. I'm really looking forward to it. Just that once we get the GIP in place, if the SIPs conform to the GIP, we're kind of bound to approve it. So I think we have to be careful to get enough information at the GIP stage that we can do that comfortably, at least from my perspective. Mm-hmm. And so, 5 years from now or 6 years from now, I'm hoping the design team's all intact and we can rely on what's being said today. But it feels like it's just a bit skinny for us right now. And,
well, yeah, and I think part of it too is that, again, we thought we would be presenting more robust specifications regarding landscape at the SIP level, knowing partly that our landscaping is going to be driven by our desire to do these LID, this low impact development. Like that's going to be the driver of a lot of it, because we want to make sure that the landscaping itself can serve multiple duties, but first and foremost to be part of that process of managing water and all that good stuff. So I guess, is there something specific that you can mention, Randy, that you would like to see here, knowing that this is going to play out with that direction?
Well, I mean, just generally, if from other GIPs I've been part of, we might talk about how buffer yards are treated, what's going to be happening in the front yards in terms of treescape, or how will the private streets be handled, in terms of treescape. I'm not necessarily worried about foundation plantings and that kind of thing, but just more generally, we've got some pretty tight front yards, and so it will be interesting to see, what we can get in terms of landscaping in those areas and how we create, pedestrian friendly environment on the streets with relatively tight front yards. And so I thought that, some landscape standards relative to that would be good. I think along the same lines, some of the architectural, some description in terms of the architecture, in terms of what might be happening in terms of entries or porches or activating the front yards, any of that would be helpful at this stage to kind of carry through to the SIPs.
Yeah, we put a lot of thought into how this will play out architecturally, and with the single family houses in particular, a big focus on front porches. I've been fortunate enough. I mean, we've with Phil Tab being our land planner, his primary work has been a place called Serenbe, which Serenbe Street is named off after, which is just south of Georgia. And the way that the architecture plays out there, and the distance to the street, and the way that the front yards play out, I was fortunate to feel and see that firsthand, and this is based off of a lot of that. But we again using stormwater management as the driver of the landscaping, but then also just beautiful aesthetics. And with the small front yards, we're not, again, unless it's dependent on a stormwater management issue, we don't see like traditional lawns, with front green lawns and stuff. There will be plantings that'll be managed by actually the HOA. So it will be stunning. And in terms of, again, the different styles of houses, I wish I could say more architecturally. I mean, early on, we had shown some potential concept photos that kind of gave a look at what the style was of the shotgun homes, the cottages, the townhomes, but we didn't include that in the package here.
Kathleen, can I jump in
Sure.
real quick? Yeah, so what I hear you saying, Randy, is that some general principles around landscaping and architecture. And I actually think that the plan that's up on the screen right now has that. It's just not in words. And so I think what we need to do, Kathleen and Jason and Bruce, is take some of the stuff that has been sort of inherent in the work that you've been doing from a design standpoint, and just put those principles, bullet them out, so that future plan commissions have something to refer to. So you're not always trying to make the case. And it also, and these would not be, I'm assuming, Randy, you're not talking about really detailed design guidelines, but really more the sort of general principles that are going to guide the overall look and feel of the development. Is that correct?
That's correct, Melissa. I think you're hitting it pretty close. We need enough that because what's part of all these statements, I'm not sure gets incorporated into the approval. There's a lot being talked about, but the SIP is going to be a recorded document. So I think we need enough in the written document to carry forward.
And Kathleen, I think that will serve you as the developer as well, because it could take 20 years for this to develop, and you want to make sure that it's a coherent vision, and then that will give the policymakers the ability to approve things along the vision that you have had. So
sure, I just want to make sure I'm clear, because in the letter, in the submission letter, and many times throughout the meetings with both the committees and with Plan Commission, we've talked about these things. So I want to make sure I know specifically what is missing so that I can include what would be helpful.
Want to go through that again, Randy? You need to sort of give a quick overview.
Okay, I guess I didn't see anything in terms of architectural style or any design guidelines at all in terms of building architecture. There is some description, some very rough descriptions about landscaping, and certainly your intent is well laid out. But what are we? And I'm not sure I'm totally prepared to go through all of it, but I mean the highlights for me would be, how are we addressing the streetscapes, particularly along the private streets, in terms of street trees. How are we going to address the landscaping in the yards we have front yards that are as small as 5 feet in certain cases. So, how do we handle the landscaping in those areas? Maybe it's, and like has been said, it's going to be tied into the stormwater management. But I think some general treatment on that. Do we have buffer yards that we need to worry about? Parmenter Street is, I think, and Bellefontaine are two really critical streets to be looking at in terms of landscaping. So those would be my general comments on landscaping. In terms of architecture, do we have a list of approved materials?
I don't know that we could get to that at this level, Randy. I mean, approved materials, that feels like a level of detail that, particularly given the variety of housing types, that would be tough.
Okay, but all right. Well, is vinyl siding going to be allowed?
Well, see, there you're getting at some specific things, and that I think is more of a principle, right? Than in terms of the quality of the materials as opposed to specific materials.
So Melissa, I think you understand what I'm trying to get at. Mm-hmm. And I think that I think that it wouldn't take a lot, but I think that some additional thought needs to be put into getting your intent down into more actionable items, I guess is one way to put it.
So Randy, you have more questions or from the development team more answers?
The only question is maybe the last question is for staff. Has the fire department provided a review?
Abby, or
I was having trouble getting unmuted. The fire department did receive the plans. I did not see that they had provided any specific comments at this point, but they are on the list and they generally review all the plans.
I just wanted to make sure that they were satisfied with the street widths and fire department access for the multifamily parcels.
I will check on that, and just to be sure, Randy, but I didn't see any comments from them.
And I know that Bruce met with, I think, the fire chief. Bruce, do you know what was the date of that meeting?
Oh, that was in September sometime, I think it was. And our focus was on street widths and access on the Parmenter, making sure that we have adequate points of access into the multifamily, which Deputy Reigel, I believe,
Matt Reigel.
I sat down with him and yeah, they seem to be, they didn't have any concerns that when I met with them. So
in the past, they've always, this is Mark, they've often talked about having a 20-foot clear area. Are they still, do you recall if they're still insisting on that?
20-foot clear area
For maneuvering their rigs. That was, 10 years ago, they would make that a common request, but I'm heartened to hear that if they don't have serious concerns with this, that's great.
Yeah, it was almost as if, well, if, you know, if we're meeting the guidelines for the
Fire code.
yeah, fire code guidelines, that we're very good with it.
I can add a few things, Mark. I did talk to Bruce about his conversation with fire department. We went over the multifamily. The 20 feet clear that you're referring to is the emergency vehicle access. That's quite
Right.
typical around buildings. If we go over a certain height, that gets a bit wider. We're quite familiar with the fire code in the EVA access. What we were hearing from fire department, it wasn't anything different than that's pretty typical from the fire code. So we're quite prepared and with what we show on the plans here.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So there were no red flags, Bruce or Jason, from the fire department?
I'm sorry, repeat the question.
Were there any, so they didn't have any objection to any of it?
No,
Correct.
great.
Okay, thank you. Randy, you have any more questions? You are done.
I'm done for now. Thank you.
Okay, so the next one is Commissioner John Schaefer, and then Commissioner Gritchen, and then Commissioner Kurt Paulson. Commissioner John Schaefer.
Yeah, I just want to say I appreciate Randy's comments on these. I think that we did see a number of concepts early on as to visual issues on many of these houses, and we're still at a GIP, not an SIP level. And I guess Kathleen has made a very good case, I think, over the time that she's got the right spirit for this development, and I support this wholly. And I think that while we can have concerns, I'm not really concerned with moving forward at this point, because I think she's very aware of what's going on and what needs to be covered. So I just wanted to make a general statement that I'm still very much in support of this all.
Thank you, Commissioner John Schaefer. You have any questions, John?
No, I think that I feel secure that the issues we've raised are important issues, but they're being heard and being listened to and have been listened to. And I think it's time to move forward and take it to the next stage.
Okay, thank you, John. Commissioner Gretchen.
Hello. I guess I would mirror the previous two comments. I think the developers created a lot of trust with the community, and we have a good sense that it will go forward in a way that's appropriate for all stakeholders. My question would be about the street elevations. 1, 2, and 3 look appropriate, but 4, 5, 6, and 8 don't seem to have dedicated sidewalks. Or if there is a sidewalk, there's no terrace. So I live next to private roads that have this situation, and it's an absolute disaster to walk there. And part of it is landscaping, because shrubs tend to encroach the sidewalk, and there's nowhere else to move around the shrub except onto the street. Now, if you're in a wheelchair, you're pushing a stroller, or you have a kid on a bike, that doesn't work. And I really feel that this development, being so engaged in the idea of people walking and biking, being very pedestrian friendly, and having services within the neighborhood, that pedestrian safety, especially for those who need it the most, like children and strollers and people in wheelchairs and older folks with stability issues, really need to have sidewalks, dedicated sidewalks. It's a really big issue in the winter in particular. Another problem with sidewalks that are elevated with stormwater curbs next to it and then driveways coming down is that the sidewalk angles back up, and that really just forces people down into the street if they're on wheels. It's very unsafe. I would like to see some improvement with the sidewalk situation, that every road has equal access for any type of mobility need.
Development team.
I'm going to have, I think Jason and Bruce, I'm going to have them dive in so that they can, I want to make sure we're, looking at the same thing, Gretchen. Just to, so can you guys dive in?
Yeah, I think, so Gretchen, would you remind me of the sections that you have a little bit of concern are 4, 5, 6? Is that?
Sure. So section 4 is private road north of Bellefontaine. 5, private road south of Bellefontaine. 6 is the private alley. 7 has a terrace. 8 is the multifamily fire access. So I was looking at, are these really necessary areas for people to be walking? But I think that some of these really are. 8, maybe not, depending on where the entries to the buildings are, but if there's parking behind those, and I'm not sure about 8, but the dog park is up by 4. You have services along, what road is that? 3. So in section 5, how do the houses in the southeast corner get out? There's no sidewalk there for those houses. Anybody using the alley for 4 or 6 trying to get to the dog park, again, do they have to go all the way around the subdivision to get out? Why can't they use a sidewalk to get over to the dog park or the services? I have living in a neighborhood like this, I'm just going to raise the issue for the people that are going to be living there, because it's not convenient. It's very inaccessible.
Well, I think and I don't have the number. I think the private street in the north, well, both private streets along the north side and the south side, I believe they're 24 feet wide, and then they have a 5-foot sidewalk on each side. Now at the driveways, as driveways get cut in, there's opportunities to bring the sidewalk down instead of ramping it to one side. So I think I think both of those drives have the sidewalk on each side of the drive. It's just that they're right up next to the curb line, so you're walking up alongside the curb. The streets, they're low volume streets, so it's just the local traffic that typically uses those, similar to the private alley. It's just primarily for the residents in the rear of their house, accessing their garages. It kind of goes with the character of the housing that we're proposing as well, especially along the north side with the homes, the Mews, the London Mews, and the townhomes up right tight to the street. So I don't know if that helps. Answer any question you have or concerns that you have.
It helps to understand that 4 does have a sidewalk. It's mentioned in the notation, but it doesn't appear that way on the elevation. So it must look like 5.
I think what we're not showing here, we do show people walking on each side where we show the 5-foot sidewalks. But what would be useful is to label that more specifically.
Yeah.
So you can see that 4, 5 show sidewalks on both sides. 6 is a unique situation where it's really an auto access to the rear of units. so that the front of those units have a walkable sidewalk that doesn't have curb cuts and is more pedestrian oriented. So really what we're depicting in number 6 is not a pedestrian street, but an automobile, more specific street.
Okay.
And then on, if someone doesn't mind panning to the other 2 at the bottom, number 7 is very specific coming in off of Parmenter. And what we're doing there is we do have a wide 15-foot parkway and sidewalk for pedestrians. And then number 8 is a unique situation where fire department access will be required around the multifamily. That very wide route there is actually never going to actually be seen by the fire department unless there's an emergency. The occasional car coming into the garage for those units there. But what we're really trying to do is not provide a curb and gutter and a red curb and a place where only cars go. We actually we're encouraging that to be a pedestrian route that is cars and cars second and EVA third. It just happens to be so required for EVA. So really you would see that entire 26 feet in the middle where people can ride bikes and walk.
Gretchen, does that answer your questions?
I guess
Somewhat?
I still have a feeling of concern about it. I mean, most accidents that happen within a mile or 2 of your house. People are not really paying attention when they're in their own neighborhoods. And we feel it all the time when we're walking on North and South Chickahawk. And I would just invite you to walk across go 1 mile over to Chickahawk and try to push a stroller or a wheelchair on the sidewalk, and then you'll understand what that's going to be like if there's curb cuts.
And the intention of this plan too is being very thoughtful about those curb cuts that you talked about and the angling of the sidewalk. We want to separate those curb cuts from the most walkable streets where we really want to encourage people to walk out their front door, walk into someone who's walking their baby in a stroller and not have to worry about those clashes with the automobiles coming in and out of their garages, and try to separate those 2.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you.
Gretchen, you have more
Welcome.
questions, Gretchen?
No, that's it.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next one is Commissioner Paulson.
Yeah, just quickly 2 follow-up questions. With regard to Gretchen's question on 4 and 5 here, does the city allow the travel lane on private streets to be less than 12 feet per car? Because if these are private roads, you could imagine those travel lanes being 11 feet or even 10 feet so that you could get perhaps even with the Muse maybe closer to the street, or a 6-foot sidewalk. I think, just speaking personally, I'd much rather see 6-foot sidewalks and 11 feet travel lanes on private roads. And I guess Kathleen does as well.
Yeah. Yes.
I agree too.
Does the city require that to be 12 feet?
Abby or Mark?
I don't think we have standards for private streets in terms of from Public Works, but I don't know how it would affect fire department review. So I think we'd need to look into it.
Right, I agree with that.
Oh, thank you, Abby.
I'll just put that in a note that I think we're open to smaller travel lanes. And then the other thing that Randy brought up was terms of ADUs on the detached housing.
Mm-hmm.
And just speaking personally, but I think others would agree that I'm in favor of allowing internal ADUs on all of those detached houses. Because in many ways, it's also allowing you to produce perhaps multi-generational housing where you might have a grandparent suite or a mother-in-law suite. And that's much more common out in the West where you consciously design multi-generational housing. So I'd be fine with an amendment that allows internal ADUs on the detached housing. I don't think you're going to get detached ADUs to fit on the lot, but the internal ADU should work.
So,
Go ahead.
yeah, Kathleen, go ahead. But I have a question for Abby. Abby, we are writing that zoning code. You think it will be covered in that one?
No, this is a PDD.
Also,
it
it
wouldn't-
would not be,
It would
okay,
not cover this, yeah.
okay,
Right,
all
so
right.
if we were to allow ADUs citywide, this development could potentially end up with a stricter standard than what we would have in the rest of the city. So I think that's what Kurt's flagging.
Okay,
Yeah, and again, I mean, we were trying to just respectfully be conservative. I am open. I don't know how it affects, do we know yet exactly how it will affect our numbers for urban service area? If they're internal ADUs, that might make a difference.
Generally, internal ADUs are going to have water and sewer hookup on the main parcel, not a separate lateral.
Right. I am very open to ADUs across the entire development. We were just trying to show some restraint that would give at least a, I think part of the idea with putting them on the attached housing was it gave a more defined number. And that's why we did it that way, but I am totally open to opening up that language.
I mean,
Yeah,
the other way to do it is
wonderful,
just,
Kathleen. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Kurt.
the other
So
way to do it is just change the term single to double, right? That any of these allow up to double families, or you're just regulating the building footprint, so the style is single family. But if someone wants to make it a 2 or 3 flat or create an ADU, I think in the context of this neighborhood that fits. But that might be, harder for you to code in terms of your design standards. So I think the ADU is the better route.
Okay. So we'll add some language, or you'll add some language that opens that up? How procedurally do we do that?
When we make a motion for the GIP, it'll be to amend the GIP to allow internal accessory dwelling units in the detached housing units as well. And then when we get to the SIP stage, we'll have specific standards in terms of, much like in our new zoning code, it'll be, size limits and parking requirements and those sorts of things.
Okay.
are you done,
Yes.
Commissioner Paulson?
Yes.
Okay, so next one is, well, I should ask Commissioner Mike Slavish before I ask the others to, is there anything which you want to say, ask, or not say?
No questions, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, Commissioner Randy Bruce.
Yes. What happens? I mean, all of this is predicated on Bellefontaine's alignment and width, and particularly the street design as it's shown now. I guess for the applicant, what if it's recommended that this be a 4-lane traffic with 35-mile-per-hour speed limits, then what happens to the design? Has that been thought through at all?
Well, we were certainly hoping to have resolution on that coming into this. To me, I have an amazing land planner who I think can make something work, and we've batted that around. I think Middleton loses if this is the case. I think Middleton loses because this goes from something spectacular to something that the design sort of starts to disintegrate. I mean, you're still going to end up with really beautiful housing and with sustainable design and, care for the environment. You're going to end up with a lot of good stuff, but it's just, I'm just more concerned what it means overall to this development and then how that plays out for Middleton. Because it really starts to just carve this up in a way that's just not cohesive anymore. That said, I still think Middleton will end up with housing that they can be proud of and a development they can be proud of. I think it will be hard for it to be exceptional if that happens.
Well, I think our previous motion had expressed support for a 2-lane roadway and I'm not sure where, what weight we carry. But I think from the Plan Commission's perspective, if I remember correctly, we were all supportive of a narrower roadway. I just was unsure what would happen to the GIP if that didn't come about. So that's why I asked the question. And then is there a bike lane provided for on Bellefontaine, or where is that? Where do we get the east-west bike connection?
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I'll have, I'm going to have Bruce or Jason, do you want to jump in on talking about this?
Sure.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I'll take this one.
Go first.
Okay, I'll take this one. Do you mind zooming in just so we can kind of maximize the site plan a little bit? Yeah, we noticed too that it was a little bit hard to see in our graphics here. So I'm going to start from the west-hand side at Parmenter and the Bellefontaine extension. And then if you'd like to, we can also go to one of the street sections. It's going to show how we're accommodating that. So on the south side of Bellefontaine at Parmenter, up on the sidewalk we have a multi-use bike path. We're calling a separated bike path on here. Yep, and there we go. Whoever's driving just showed it. It's running on the south side of Bellefontaine and then down to the southeast corner of the site. And then that connects to the existing bicycle network that goes around the Graber Pond and further east as well.
So it's combined with it's a multi-use path combined with the pedestrian path. And how wide is it?
How wide?
Yeah.
Is it 10 probably?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Very good.
Similar, I think similar to, we worked closely with Mark Opitz on this, and we all visited Madison on separate trips, and we saw some of the great multi-use paths that are there. So that was some of the inspiration for that as well. And you can see it here on the right-hand side where the cursor is, right? Yeah. On the Bellefontaine extension.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
More questions, Randy, or you're done? Well, somebody's children are, if somebody could mute, there's some children's very pleasant sounds, so which is great.
Apologize, that was me. They're having dinner right now, and
no, that's awesome. You got really lovely children. So Randy, you are done with your questions. So I have a question for the whole city staff and the plan commissioners too. How could we ensure, working with MP or whoever, that Bellefontaine is 2-lane period? Is there anything which we could do? I'm willing to do as a mayor whatever I could do, because it should be 2-lane, 25 miles period. That should be it.
That is 100% within the purview of the city.
Okay.
So the MPO data that we're waiting on is just to help guide the decision,
Okay.
but it is pretty common for the Plan Commission and the Public Works Committee to disagree on these kinds of issues and then have conflicting recommendations, and then it's up to the city council to sort it out.
Okay, okay, so it's in our own hand then. Okay, that's great. Well, any other questions from any plan commissioners? Any other questions? So Abby, I have a few questions here that, so you talk about the fire department, you talk about the zoning, Bellefontaine. So do we know when the MPO's number? I guess we don't, so it will be sometime.
It's
So,
way overdue at this point. We were
Okay.
supposed to have it weeks ago.
okay. Now, the biggest issue is the stormwater, so they're going to infiltrate 100% of it, and it's a low impact development. So in the motion, we are going to send it to Water Source and Management Commission, no question about it. So is there anything more that you recommend, Abby, at this time?
Well,
Besides what you have already in your motion as conditions of approval.
the Plan Commission could consider adding a condition that would say to incorporate low impact development best management practices where possible. You could also consider another contingency of approval that would reference the 100% stay on that Bruce mentioned. Or you could simply rely on Water Resources Management Commission's review, which I think is already listed as a contingency.
So what would be your preference?
Well, I can go ahead and make a motion because I had written some of those things down.
Okay, go ahead.
If you're welcome to that. So Abby, I don't know if, or whoever's driving, if you can pull up the staff recommended motion, I'm going to edit it slightly. I would make a motion that we find that the GIP is consistent with the comprehensive plan, recommend approval of the rezoning request to the Common Council contingent on the completion of the traffic impact analysis and developer addressing to the satisfaction of the city engineer any findings of the TIA. Future resolution of the alignment right-of-way dedication and cross-section for Bellefontaine Boulevard, period. The Plan Commission strongly recommends, not just recommends, strongly recommends Bellefontaine be a 2-lane residential street at 25 miles an hour. And if you want to, you can say, and we're going to die in a ditch over that one. We're going to fight. Third point, city approval of a stormwater management plan with 100% infiltration. And then add after that, developer shall incorporate low impact design, best management practices where possible. Next point would be to permit internal accessory dwelling units on all single family properties. And then the last three there just as worded in the staff recommendation.
Kurt, could you repeat the last one that you added to this list, the internal permit?
To permit internal accessory dwelling units on all single family properties or parcels.
Okay, I will second it.
Can I add something regarding the suggestion on the 100% infiltration? If we could include the 100% infiltration, I think should include, as it somehow relates to the ordinance requirement.
Right. Okay. Yes.
So that we're not infiltrating 100% of every storm.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. 100% infiltration as required in the city stormwater ordinance.
There you go.
And I agree with that. So.
Yeah, I see what Bruce is saying, right? Because, yeah.
Okay. Now, any further questions or comments?
Kurt, I'm sorry, one more thing about the language. That language about the ADUs, that doesn't wipe away our ability to have the external ADUs.
Right.
So,
right.
Okay.
So
just
yeah, let's make sure that the motion says that to also permit, actually, maybe it would be easier to say to permit internal ADUs on all residential properties.
You had said single family, so now you want to say residential?
Well, single family, because that includes the single family attached, because they did have
Right.
the ADUs on the single family attached. So yeah, single family attached and detached, just to be more specific. Does that?
But internal ADUs, if they're over the garage, is that an internal ADU? If it's over a detached garage, is that an internal ADU? I'm not trying to get.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
So you mean in addition to the?
In addition to the ADUs proposed, right? Also permit internal ADUs on the single family detached properties. Thank you for that clarification.
So, well, I agree to that. So I think it addresses all the issues raised by the Friends of Pheasant Branch, and whatever rest may be, it will be addressed by the Water Sources Management Commission, right? Okay, any other questions or comments from the commissioners or the development team? Okay, otherwise, the motion to approve as it was just motion to approve the rezoning from agricultural to planned development district, PDD general implementation plan of Bell Farm, 44 acres east of 4887 Parmenter Street. And the motion just made by Commissioner Paulson, and which I seconded. All those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. I want to say thank you at this time to all the people who have made their comments, especially the Friends of Pheasant Branch, Hans, Herb, and the other vice president of Friends of Cattle Pond. I know the Cheryl, not the Cattle Pond, the Pheasant Branch. I know Cheryl is there. I'm not going to read all the names, but thank you to every one of you. And if you have any further questions or concern, and thank you to Pam. Pam, thank you for coming too, and everyone else. Okay, all right, we are on to item number 2. Resolution number 2021-58 to recommend an urban service amendment for Bell Farms 44-acre east of 4887 Parmenter Street. So I guess we already talked about and need a motion to approve. Recommend approval of resolution 2021-58.
So moved.
Okay, I second it. Any questions or comments? Any question or comments of sending it to for the urban service approval? Okay, all those in favor of the motion for approval of the resolution number 2021-58 say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, we are on to item number 3. Well, thank you, Kathleen. Go ahead and do those wonderful things and the team. Okay, this is the specific implementation plan modification for sign design review 1 Community Bank 1836 Aurora Street. Daphne?
Daphne's not present, but I can.
Okay,
I can
Mark,
take it.
go ahead. All
Yep.
right, you can handle it.
Daphne got the night out, got the night off. So this is in downtown Middleton, northeast corner of Aurora Street, or southwest corner of Aurora Street and Elmwood. And there are 2 signs facing Elmwood and 2 facing Aurora, I believe. And the way that she looked at this, which I completely agree, is combining the sign and logo areas. She said that a similar property on a B2 zone would be allowed 1 sign with 48 square feet of sign area per street frontage, But since this isn't a PDD, there's more flexibility with the sign code. Technically, there are 2 signs on each facade, but the way they're placed next to each other is similar to how a sign with the logo would look on other similar buildings. So because of the flexibility, we are comfortable with what's proposed, and we are recommending approval as a minor SIP modification.
Okay, so Steve, you are the developer, or you have your raised hand?
Mark, hello, Mayor. I am Steve Piotr. I'm President and Chief Executive Officer of One Community Bank. And on screen with me tonight are my colleagues who are connected to the project. So we just wanted to be here to participate in the meeting, say how excited we are to be part of the Middleton community, and also answer any questions that you might have. I think Mark did a fantastic job of summarizing the signs and making the recommendation to move forward. But we're here to help in whatever way we can.
Thank you, Steve. Great job. Okay, any questions or comments from anyone at this time?
As you can see from my background, I'm right there, right by their building. So
I think I see you right there, Mark. So it's good.
Yeah. Hi. Nice to see you.
He's going to open his account very soon, Steve. So, okay. Any questions or comments? Otherwise, need a motion to approve.
Move to approve as a minor SIP modification.
Slavish will second.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Let me say that again. Move to approve as a SIP modification for sign design review.
Okay. Okay. Oh, the One Community Bank, 1836 Aurora Street, and Mike Slavish seconded. Any questions or comments at this time? Okay. Otherwise, all those in favor of the motion to approve the specific implementation plan for the modification for sign design review for One Community Bank, 1836 Aurora Street, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, Steve, go ahead and do what you need to do. So to be
Thanks
successful.
everybody on the commission, and thank you, Mayor. We look forward to hosting all of you in January at the ribbon cutting of One Community Bank Middleton. Thank you all.
All right, and Mark is ready to come there soon. Okay, thank you. Okay, all right. We are on to item number 4. Specific implementation plan modification for sign design review, Metro Market, 6800 Century Avenue. Mark, I guess Destiny isn't there, so Mark is going to take it, right?
Yeah. Is anybody on the call, here on the call for representing the applicant or not?
Anybody
Yes,
from the Metro?
yes.
Okay. Someone
Yes,
is there.
this is Mike Johnson from Graphic House. I wasn't able to get into the Zoom video for some reason, but I am here calling in.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to see in
patience.
case there are questions.
I had
So,
one,
what-
just, oh, you can go ahead, Mark, sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to give you an overview. So what this is before you tonight is to replace pick and save signage. They are looking at converting to a Metro Market at some point in the future. And they would replace signs that are currently in the building in the same places. The signs are somewhat different size. The one facing Frank Lloyd Wright would be, instead of 49 square feet, the current sign, the new sign would be 64 square feet, not counting the metal backing, which I think is reasonably comparable in size. The question, of course, is the key is to make sure that the sign itself is fitting the space relative, that it's scaled relative to the facade in which it's mounted. And I think that we can have a discussion about that, but I'm comfortable with it. The other sign faces the main entrance, the main grocery store entrance, the parking lot. And actually, I think that one would be a little smaller if I remember Daphne's comments correctly. I think that one was going to be, let's see, the sign between the parking lot entrances will be 157
both
square
bigger.
feet.
So it's 157.5 square feet. So it's a little bit.
Yeah. So, and then they would also replace the monument sign. So our staff recommendation was to provide any design feedback, but otherwise we had no objection to approving the signs as a minor SIP modification.
Okay, commissioners, go ahead. Go
Mayor,
ahead,
I just
Abby.
wanted to note one more thing. There was a mention in the staff recommendation that this was approved by the Middleton Hills Architectural Review Board.
Yeah.
And that should actually have read that it was approved by the Middleton Hills Neighborhood Board.
Okay, okay. All right. Thank you, Abby, for the correction.
Okay.
I've got a question for the applicant.
Go ahead, Randy.
Is the color of the corrugated metal backer, is that like a silver? What is that color? And
Yeah, it's a silver color galvanized metal that's meant to have sort of an industrial look and feel to it.
Okay.
And this is similar, as I understand it, from what I've seen with other metro markets, which are fine products, by the way. The fine establishment. This is the corporate identity, essentially, right?
This is the corporate identity that they have on all of their stores. Yeah, in various manners that are a little different from this, just because of different architecture. But this is the brand standard, so to speak. Yes.
Okay. Now, Mark, that's where you do your shopping, right?
It is. I actually was familiar with the Metro Market 5-6 years ago. The first one that opened, I had shopped over there and I really liked it. So I think this will be welcome.
Okay. Any other
Yes.
questions or comments from the commissioners?
Yes, this is Kurt.
Oh,
While this is not going to preclude my voting in support of the sign design, I would ask that staff record in the minutes that we request the zoning officer to continue compliance operations, that the grocery store actually be in compliance with their agreed to SIP, particularly that the eastern entrance on Frank Lloyd Wright Avenue be open to the public rather than being blocked off. So it's a continuous concern of those of us who live in the neighborhood that part of the agreement with the, as you see here in the picture, that east entrance be open to the public at least some of the time. And in the last couple of months, they've blocked it off. I recognize that's a staffing shortage due to COVID, but eventually that needs to be brought into compliance. So just wanted to mention that.
We did meet with their store manager the week before last about bringing that into compliance, and we're going to follow up with a formal letter as well.
Thank you, Abby, and thank you, Commissioner Paulson.
The emails I would get from my fellow neighbors if I didn't bring it up
all right.
would be large.
The way to go. You're doing an excellent job in representing the neighbors. So, Commissioner Gretchen.
I don't see any problem with the sizes of the signs at all. And I also don't mind the standalone sign, but the metal backing on the natural colored building really stands out, perhaps because the metal is such a cold color, the galvanized steel against the warm building, but it seems to really not fit the neighborhood. I wonder if that could be changed either to a different color metal like brass, copper, bronze, or simply left off for the building, unless it's really part of the branding.
It is this is Mike again from Graphic House. It is a critical part of their branding, and they have been adamant in that so far as to say that if that is not allowed, they'll keep the store the same. I hate to say that because it sounds like hardball, but I've worked with these folks for 30 years, and they won't proceed without that branding.
It is set up interesting that the color really doesn't match the building and the neighborhood. That is a good point, Gretchen. So there is a Mike. You don't think
And
that's
by the way, I don't disagree with you.
Okay. Gretchen, do you have more questions?
No, I just wanted to say it's not like a no-go, but it is ugly. And
Yeah.
Considering
It
that
look-
the neighborhood was so carefully planned to architecturally have these warm tones and craftsman style, it really does stand out on the building. So that's unfortunate, but I will vote for it.
I agree with you. Commissioner Randy Bruce.
Yeah, Gretchen, that's why I had asked about the material. I think it does help a little bit that it's the galvanized metal, has a little bit of flake to it, and it certainly gives that connotation of a metro. It doesn't work great with the building tones at all, but
one thing that does help, I will say, this is Mike again, is that it's not like a high gloss metal flake silver. It is a much more matte finished, traditional looking galvanized look. So it's not a bright finish.
So Mike, is it possible that, at the edges, both right, left, up, down, it could be somehow melded, or somehow, something could be done where it could somewhat match?
I don't know how that would be accomplished and still meet their brand standard. It's certainly something I guess we could talk about. We did look at one time back when we were addressing the neighborhood concern at putting a border around it, but they didn't like that, and neither did Metro Market, and quite frankly, neither did I, because it kind of made it look like a box.
Okay.
Which is not what it is. So I think that would be a struggle.
Okay. All right. So Randy, you have more questions?
I was just going to ask if they could look into just a slightly warmer tone and leave it the same profile and everything else, but just go to a little warmer tone. I feel as Gretchen does, it's not a deal killer. It's just, it isn't as attractive as it could be. And I think if they were willing to be a little bit flexible on the backer color, I think they could still keep their brand and have a more attractive finished product.
It just looks like a short term. So Gretchen, you have more questions? Randy, you are done, right?
Yes.
Okay. Gretchen, okay. So any questions from any other commissioners? Otherwise, need a motion to approve, or did we already have one?
No motion yet.
Do we have a motion to approve?
Slavish will make a motion to approve.
Need a second? Okay, I will go ahead and second it. Any further questions or comments? And the motion, Mike, is that they will make an every effort if they can try to make it more attractive or blend.
That is correct, but I think what we're saying is that regardless, we will approve it if that's not.
This is what I've heard as the motion, if this is okay with you, Mike and Gertie, to approve the sign package as a minor SIP modification, but to encourage the applicant to soften the backer color.
Absolutely.
Is that the word, the backer color?
That's personally perfect in my viewpoint, and I will push that. Don't know if I'll get anywhere, but I will push that.
Well, and I will say, oh, sorry.
I would suggest to change the word soften to warm. Should be a warmer tone.
Okay, soften and warm. How about
to encourage the applicant to soften the backer by using a warmer tone?
Awesome.
To soften the, no, I mean, I'm not sure. I'm trying to understand the language, the verb to use.
That's perfect.
To soften the metal backer design by using a warmer, not material, but a warmer color. Is that what you're, okay,
That's good.
okay,
That makes sense.
okay. And I will reiterate what Mike Johnson said, that this was actually before the city about a year ago. And when they were trying to get approval through the neighborhood, and when they didn't, they walked. So they are very strict about adhering to their design. So we may not get very far with the backer color. But
Okay, okay.
So
I think that's good enough. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, Mike, go ahead and work on it now. So.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming back.
Bet, appreciate you.
Okay, so the next item is the dental.
Yeah. And this one is my item. If you want to read, were you going to read the agenda item?
Okay, so item number 5, design review for new office building, Madison Dentistry, 2519 University Avenue. And this is Mike Opez. And
Mark.
this is, I'm sorry, Mark Opez. I apologize, Mark.
All right.
So, and this is the Jiffy Lube thing, Jiffy Lube solution. Okay,
Yes,
Mark,
this is replacing the Jiffy Lube at the corner of Maple Street and University Avenue. At this point, they are planning to use the existing driveway connection. They had contemplated a different design, but they are planning to reuse the driveway in University and place the building with parking on both sides of it, as you saw in your packet. We did at the staff level urge them to consider a design that brings the building closer to University Avenue and have the parking be on the south side. We brought that up initially, and then again, as they were presenting this design in the packet this time, we really asked them to consider that option. And so I provided today, we sent you their response to that, which is also now in the packet. The only other thing I would add to my staff report is that, and which I forgot to mention in my recommendation, is that we have been asking businesses like this to install bike racks, bicycle parking. And so that should be included. I didn't see that in the site plan, but the applicant is present, I believe, and can speak to that.
Okay.
That's all I have.
All right. Okay, so let's have questions or comments from the commissioners. Commissioner John Schaefer, you're on.
Yeah, I went by the site today and the apartment buildings next to it are very set back pretty far. And other than the architectural building across the street, Maple Street, everything is set back. And I think in some ways, the idea of pushing it forward does not really fit the character of everything around it. And I have no problems whatsoever with it sort of being set back, given the whole block with the back set apartments.
I think that's a great point. Commissioner, are you done, John?
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Mike Slavish and then Commissioner Kurt Paulson. Mike Slavish.
Yeah, I guess I would tend to agree with John's comments. You know, the building that's there currently, I mean, essentially, it's my understanding that would be torn down and replaced with this new building, but, you know, generally in the same location. And with the majority of the parking stalls to the rear of the property, but, you know, again, recognizing that, you know, the customers would park, that's my understanding, you know, in the front. So, I mean, I guess consistent with John, I would support the design as proposed from the developer.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kurt Paulson and then Commissioner Randy Bruce.
Yeah, I was wondering if whoever's driving the bus could zoom into the on this the image on the left side, the kind of site context. I guess you have to scroll down a little bit. Sorry.
I'm trying. I think my computer is reacting very slowly. So I'm trying to zoom in, but I think I might have frozen it up.
Late at night.
So, yeah, I mean, well, I'm cognizant of what John Schaefer just said. We are in the process of creating a new University Avenue corridor plan, which I imagine, we haven't seen it yet, but I would imagine has this idea of urban design, which is buildings closer to each other and closer to the street rather than setback. So I do appreciate staff's trying to suggest some of the alternate site plans. I guess my question for Mark is, you said in the email, you said to us, if I'm reading the email correctly, that the applicant does not accept any of those alternate site plans. Is that how I'm reading the email correctly?
Yeah, I mean, the driver for them was they wanted more parking on, they wanted more off-street parking. And this design made it easier for them to have more parking on the site. Otherwise, the parking lots didn't lay out as the parking lot did not lay out as well with just the parking on the south side of the building. And that's, Abby's able to scroll down, that is in the packet now at the end of this item, that those other drawings. So, and I think, I assume the applicant is present. I haven't actually checked, but if you have questions.
Oh, there he is.
My name's
Jeff
Austin
Eaton's here.
Wessel. I'm the owner of the dental practice, and I've been working with Iconica on the project. We really anticipate that this will be a 2-doctor practice within a year or two with 9 treatment rooms. So I think just in staff members alone, we could very easily fill 12 to 14 parking stalls. So with 9 rooms, we're kind of thinking we need, ideally we'd have about 30 spots, but going for like 24 or 25 would be somewhat of a compromise, but we would make it work.
Well, and something we always encourage at the city too is to focus parking for your customers or your clients and have employees park a block away. That's something we would strongly recommend you consider as well.
I think I like the way it's laid out. So anyway,
No, I was just going to say though that, I mean, again, we don't have the University Avenue corridor plan done, but it's, if you want to think about an urban corridor that has a walkable feel, you do everything possible to put parking lots behind the buildings rather than surface lots in front. It's just kind of the standard. I guess I'm going to go on a sermon here, but it's 1980s style suburban strip commercial development where you slap a bunch of ugly parking lots in front of buildings along the street so that buildings are set back from the street. And that just doesn't seem consistent with where I hope the design guidelines for University Avenue go. But given that this particular parcel on that corner, that apartment complex immediately east of it is unlikely to redevelop anytime soon.
yes.
I'm learning to live with it, but I really think we want to eliminate this idea of what also helps with access management, right? Not to have a curb cut for every business and every store with surface parking in front. Okay, I've said enough.
You are absolutely right, Kurt. I agree with you that you got that apartment building, they're not going to be redeveloped. And if we just push it further close to the university, it will stick like a sore thumb. And then having parking spaces 30 versus 24 is a big difference.
Well,
Okay,
except that Zing architecture studio just west, yeah, that's closer to the street.
Yeah, it is.
So it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb.
I agree with Kurt. I think this the University Avenue corridor plan is definitely going to be encouraging buildings up closer to the street and putting parking to the back wherever possible. And we have the opportunity now. And in this case, their option B gave them 23 parking stalls, and their proposed solution has 24. It's only one more parking stall.
I thought right now they have 30. They have 30
No, they don't have 30. No, they have 24. It gives us a lot more green space. I think it holds the corner way better. It matches up with Zing's building. I just really believe that that's a better solution. Now, you're right, it doesn't align with the apartment building to the east, and that apartment building to the east is well maintained and looks like it's here, but could building match or it would, well,
Did we lose
heard.
Randy?
Randy, we cannot hear you.
I think he's back now.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I lost my internet. I would just encourage the commission to push for moving the building up towards the corner. We do have parking on Maple Street available as well. It's a wide street with parking on both sides. So I think that there should be plenty of parking available.
So could somebody answer that? Somewhere I read that there was 30 parking spaces. Maybe I misread it. So Abby or Mark or somebody could
Yeah,
answer
the applicant stated he would ideally have 30 parking spaces, but their design that they proposed only has 24. And he felt that was a reasonable compromise. He just mentioned that a few minutes ago.
Okay. So the difference will be one parking space, which could be.
And for them also, it's an issue of timing. They've invested a lot of resources into this design, and they're on a short timeline to get relocated.
And also, we all realize the apartment building, that's not going anywhere. So, okay.
So can we get feedback from the applicant? Is this just,
Yeah.
is this not workable at all?
I think one of the main factors here is the timeline. I was given 7 months notice to exit my building on Greenway. And in order to meet the deadline and not go out of business, and stay in business and serve our patients, we have to break ground on this project on December 6th. And we've invested so much time in this design. I just don't know if it can happen.
Okay.
From a staff perspective, is there anything that the staff can do to help expedite the process if the site plan were to change?
That might be a question for Jeff Eaton, who is the architect. He's on the call.
I'll go ahead. Can you hear me? This is Jeff Eaton.
Yes, we can hear you, Jeff. Go ahead.
So this would be a redesign of all of the civil work that city staff has already looked at once and made comments, and we've resubmitted that late last week, and you already commented on that again. So that would have to all be done. I'm a little concerned about how we have the entry to the building really addressing University Avenue. Now with all the parking coming from the back, I think we'd want to make a nicer rear approach to the building, which we don't currently have too much of that in the current design. And we were scheduled to get that into city staff for building approval and review next week to meet our deadline to get this construction going so that we will have the building open for Dr. Wessel in the timeline that he has addressed. So it's, I don't know if we can meet the timeline.
Okay.
I mean, one thing we could do at this, Mayor, I'm sorry if it's okay if
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, depending on the will of the Plan Commission, it is something you could give us that discretion at the staff level to work with the applicant to see if this is, and it doesn't have to come back to Plan Commission then. You'd have to take that leap here to give us that authority so that we don't delay with the cycle for meetings. But, it is basically 4 weeks. December 6th is 4 weeks from now.
Yeah.
But
he's saying he'd have to redo all the civil drawings. And the question is why these concerns were not raised at the time that the civil drawings were submitted to the engineering department. I guess
That's right.
it didn't come to planning staff for review when the civil
Well,
was submitted, right?
Actually, our engineering staff actually also raised this idea earlier on. So these ideas have come up previously, and they came up in the initial consultation with city staff as well. I'll just leave it at that. If Abby maybe has anything to add.
Abby?
I don't have anything to add, Mark.
Okay, yeah.
So Jeff?
Yeah, I'll add that, this University Avenue concept plan, and I'm all for it, but it's in discussion purposes. We're following the guidelines that you currently have.
Okay.
Which does not require the building to be tight to towards university. And as you can see on this diagram here, our property line is not only is the right of way deeper there, but our property line isn't even up to the sidewalk. So we're still going to be a fair distance back from University Avenue. Even in this these two proposals here that I've drawn up.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So Commissioner John Schaefer, you had your hand up. You want to add anything or you want to make a motion?
No, I have nothing to comment. I think the alternative here is with the building in front is also good. I looked at their drawing and you could rotate that building 90 degrees counterclockwise and you'd actually have a beautiful, all your frontage against those parking lots and still have it up front. It doesn't preclude the drawings. I hate to be held hostage by the fact that you have a timeline, and I understand that, and I'm sympathetic to that. But I think it's fine that you're building there, and I will support either one. But I think that there are ways. The issue about having to rethink the front and how you enter the building doesn't seem to be so critical because your building's basically square. And if I look at the plans, you could just rotate that and change a lot of dynamics without changing the footprint at all. So that's it.
Okay. Okay, so Gretchen.
I'm also sensitive to the timeline growing up with a family that was entrepreneurs and had something like this happen. And I think the building looks beautiful no matter where it's situated. I am sensitive to also the University Avenue redevelopment and adding an additional cut through there. I think it's better if the traffic is simply directed down Maple. My question, though, is if another single-story commercial building is within the realm of the comprehensive plan and the direction of University Avenue, I thought we were trying to put more density in there. I guess I'm just looking for clarification.
Abby or Mark?
I'll let Mark. That's his.
Yeah, I mean, so I think Gretchen, your question is could this have been a two-story building to have the increased density? Is that what you were suggesting?
Yeah, if this was taller and then they could rent out additional dentistry space or other office space, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge, of course, is when you have a second story and more space, then there's a need for more parking. So, these things go hand in hand. And as Commissioner Paulson will he would immediately point out that we should have maximum parking, not minimum requirements. So we are evolving with how this corridor is this corridor is definitely evolving. And we don't have a blueprint right now until we have the University Avenue corridor plan complete. We don't have, we know the way it's likely going to go and is going, but we don't have those guidelines and in place, nor the zoning updated to reflect the new corridor plan. So in the meantime, this is an approved, this is complying with all zoning regulations. Bringing the building forward could comply with B2 zoning as well. There's some discretion, some leeway in the zoning regulations to allow the building to be on, relocated on the site as well. But the issue now, the main issue is the timeline for the applicant.
Mhm. Yeah.
You
I
have
think
more
it's a
questions?
beautiful looking design, and I think that alone will be an improvement to the corridor. It looks very modern. It looks very tasteful, and I think it blends in well with the Zing design next to it on the other side.
Are you done, Christian? You have more questions or you're done? Okay, Commissioner Randy Bruce.
I agree. I think the building is very attractive, very well done, and I want to compliment the architects on that. It was, I think it will be attractive. I just think it would be much more attractive if it didn't have a parking lot in front of it. And I want to encourage them to try to accommodate one of their alternative design options. But I don't know, and Mark, you have to tell us whether we even have that right as the Plan Commission to restrict their design option there.
I mean, you're empowered to grant design review, to review the design of a project. And I don't have the ordinance in front of me, given where I'm not at my office right now, so I don't have ready access to design review. But in my view, ideally, we would have given them this guidance earlier in the project, and I think you would have been on solid ground. I think you still would be now on solid ground to approve the design, a different design. But I don't really know how else to answer it other than I think there's some flexibility and discretion here with design standards. My question would be, can the design, can the building be as designed moved forward on a different, are we just talking about the change in access and parking? Is that the main change, or would there be other changes required to the building to shift it? I guess that's a question for Jeff.
But just had a but. No, I was just going to say, but all our comments are in the context of, we would have allowed more flexibility if the applicant wanted it, but we don't have any actual statutory ability to, because it complies with the zoning now.
Right.
So I'm gonna vote in favor of it. And it's not trying to say that it was a bad building. I think it is a nice architecture building. It's a missed opportunity, but it's not something we can force them to.
Yeah, and I kind of meant to say that. And what I meant to say is certainly in your purview and prerogative to say all the things you are saying and encourage different design and bringing it forward to the street to create that edge. But Kurt, I agree with Kurt's analysis.
So Commissioner Paulson, are you ready to make a motion then?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve design review. Is that what, I don't see the staff notes, how the motion should be phrased. Make a motion to approve the design. Subject to compliance with setback requirements, landscape lighting, and all other applicable zoning regulations. Is that how you have the motion written, Mark?
I have comply with setback requirements, landscape lighting, and all other applicable zoning regulations. I also wanted to ask about the bicycle parking again. I had brought that up in my staff comments. Jeff or?
Yeah, this is Jeff again. If you go to one of the civil plans, I can show you where the bike parking is.
Yeah, I looked for it and I couldn't find it. So.
Yeah, or I can contact you tomorrow.
Okay, but you do have some plans for how many bikes can be parked?
2 bikes right now.
Let's increase that.
What's your recommendation?
I was thinking 5 or 6, but we don't have a specific standard. So let's talk about that tomorrow. But I'd like to see, because if you have a couple employees that bike and then you have a couple customers, it'd be nice to, or customers, clients, it would be nice to be able to accommodate them.
Okay, need a second.
I'll second. Schaefer seconds.
Okay. Questions or comments? Randy, you have some questions or comments, or Randy?
No, I just didn't raise it. It didn't lower my hand. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? So the motion passes. Okay, Jeff, work with the staff and let's get it done. So, okay, we are on to the last
All right,
item,
thank you.
which should be
Thank you.
quite. It is the specific implementation plan modification, the conservancy subdivision for increased building height, acre building 6763 South Chickahawk Trail. Mark?
Yes, so this is before you, Michelle Aker Neal, I assume is, or is it Nell? I can't see Nell. I presume you're here on behalf of this application. We've had a few of these in the neighborhood over the last several years. This seems very much in line with what other requests have been approved by the city. So our recommendation, given the topography of this neighborhood and the precedent set in the area, we have no objection to this request and recommend approval as a minor SIP modification.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the commissioners? Otherwise, you need a motion to approve.
So only small note, I just wanted to make it, the application is correct, but the address on the agenda is not correct. It's 6755 Chickahawk. So I don't think that's a big deal, but
Well, that is a big deal if you don't have it, right? 6755, okay.
correct. Yep.
So, okay, I will reread it. So this is SIP modification, conservancy view subdivision for increased building height, acre building at 6755 Chickahawk Trail. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll be right.
Okay, need a motion to approve.
Move to approve as a minor SIP modification.
Motion by Commissioner Paulson, need a second. Okay, I will go ahead and second it. Any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion for the SIP modification of conservancy view subdivision for increased building height of acre building at 6755 Chickahawk Trail, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, well.
Oh, I see Gretchen has a comment. Sorry.
Well, is that too late, Gretchen, or is there some?
I did have my hand up before you suggested approval. I guess my question is because in a previous meeting, the standard was set lower because of not impeding a view of the conservancy. That's what I thought I gathered from the minutes or the agenda. Would this be impacting anybody's view? Because this is, I think, one of the last houses to be put in. Would this be impacting a direct neighbor's view of the sunset or the conservancy? That would be my only question.
Michelle, you can answer that. It is approved now, but I think we have done similar things for.
I don't believe it would be any taller than any of the neighbors' lots. I mean, it is an empty lot right now, so I mean, somebody is seeing nothing on this lot, and we are going to build a two-story house on it. From the back of it, we're not going any taller. We have kept in mind to do a two-story heights without anything excessive for the heights, though. So, you know, and you can see that on the plot map here, we're not taking up every square inch of the lot space too.
Yeah, I think that the hipped roof helps with the view as well. It's not quite as intense on all sides.
Not quite as tall, and we did try to keep our roof design and truss design to be as low as we can and still meet the needs of the house.
So is that okay with you, Gretchen? It's in your neighborhood there, so.
Yep. Oh, trying to lower my hand. Yes, thank you.
Okay, do we need to vote again, or is it?
You hadn't actually.
I don't think
announced the
we
vote
voted.
yet.
Oh, okay.
You started voting, but you never finished, so I think her
Okay.
comments were in line.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion passes. Well, does anybody has any stories to tell, or John is going to tell you a little thing about Greece, or we need a motion to adjourn?
I'll have a motion to adjourn. It's more interesting.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn to Greece.
Okay.
For vacation. Yeah, there you
Second.
go.
Second. All those in favor of the motion to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you, and have a great evening.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Good
Night.
night.